Sorry about that. speaker up, your download. Are you sure? That's right.
Commissioners, to order. We're going to start off with prayer and the pledge. So if Pastor Ben Aguilera could please come forward and get us started, that'd be great.
Thanks for having me. It's almost as fun as a church service. Would you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, our Creator, Sustainer, and Redeemer, we thank you for gathering us here today. For in front of us, we know that it's not just another board meeting to discuss policy and procedure, but in front of us is the work of caring for the well-being of our neighbors. And as we do this, let us be mindful of the weight of leadership in caring for the needs of humanity in our county. So, Lord, I pray that you give our county commissioners a humble heart to listen to the people and also to the ears of one another. I pray that you give them the wisdom to make the best decision, not only for those in this room, but for those who are not in this room, especially those on the margins, those oppressed, and those in great need. For Jesus, you once said, as you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me. So, Lord, we pray that your kingdom come, your will be done, and let the fruit of this meeting bring those words to pass. In the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., "Oh God, make us willing to do your will. Come what may, increase the number of persons of goodwill and moral sensitivity." And as we are here because we do in fact care about the goodwill of all, and we want to be in alignment with your will, Jesus. So let our hearts be softened and our minds be open to the new things, Jesus, that you want for us. And God, I do pray that each and every one of us grows in our understanding of your love and grace. For your love keeps no record of wrongdoing. And I pray, Lord, that this love and grace shape our hearts and transforms us as a people and as a county. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could please stand and join us for the pledge. Right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Ms. Cosby.
Here.
Mrs. Ebel.
Here.
Mr. Zylstra.
Here.
Mr. Bonema.
Here.
Mr. Moss.
Here.
Mrs. Wenzel.
Present, I'm in Hudsonville.
Mrs. Curran,
Here.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Here.
Mr. Belknap,
Here.
Mr. Bergman. Here. Mr. Mrs. Medema.
Here.
Sorry,
So.
we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Wenzel is joining remote, and so we'll be participating remotely due to illness. And so any votes tonight will be by roll call. So moving into correspondence, we have an early voting update from Clerk Roebuck.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be brief, but I did want to just update the board on some of the significant progress that we've been making on the early voting process since I last talked to you guys in September. So we are fully staffed at this point with, according to our municipal agreement roadmap, which calls for a full-time election logistics specialist. So Ken Berry, we've hired Ken as an internal hire. He actually worked for our Circuit Court Records division for quite a while, but a very good logistical mind and has been really plowing through a lot of that logistical stuff that's been needed, the site setup and the supplies and the kind of onboarding and coordinating election workers and ensuring election equipment's ready to go. So we're very excited about that. We also just hired our temporary part-time position, which was approved. The budget was approved for that beginning in January. And so Morgan McDonald is our essentially assistant to the election logistics specialist, and she's been doing great work for us even just this past couple of weeks. So all good news there. So as we have mentioned, and you probably have heard, 4 early voting sites. Those have all been identified. They've all been approved by the County Election Commission. Polkton Township, Georgetown Township, and Grand Haven Township have all been gracious enough to basically allow us the use of their township facilities, which is really great in a lot of ways. I think it's places where people in the community know that they can go. It's also essentially free of charge for us. There's some moderate upfront, sorry, I'm missing the word, the deposits that are required under those agreements, but certainly a great deal for us. And then the 4th location in Holland is actually the county site. So the county's a great host too. I like those guys. The county's great. And our facilities has just been fantastic and working with us through that process there. And that's at James Street in the MDHHS building, which is directly behind the new brand new Holland Township Fire Station. We're going to be in there. Something I don't often get to say, and this is that the state funding will be more than what we anticipated, which is pretty extraordinary. Honestly, initially we were basically told the funding is going to cost, it's going to cover the basics of the election equipment itself. And then we were hoping for some additional funding for at least election workers, kind of a baseline for election workers. And so we submitted that grant information according to what the state wanted. They've covered those costs, but then have asked us and others around the state, of course, to resubmit our grants asking for additional items. And so we have done that and, you know, basically added all kinds of additional things in there. And so whatever the state will cover, I think we're very excited about that. We're at this point anticipating well over $1 million in savings to Ottawa County taxpayers. We're initially looking at that $700,000 mark for the year 2024. But super excited about that. We have secured a vendor for the video camera installation for those secure rooms, the secure facilities where election equipment is stored overnight, the early voting locations, and that is Night Watch. So you may be familiar with Night Watch because we already have a contract here through the county for our security systems here. So that's worked out really well. IT and facilities has sort of facilitated that process also, which has been great. So Night Watch has been on site at all 4 of those locations, kind of working out the details of ensuring that we have access to that footage during the early voting periods, and then that is shut off for the sake of our, you know, local jurisdictions who are hosting us. We retain the footage, of course, but then, you know, it's not actually taking video footage during non-early voting days of the year. The line management tool has also been secured, and that's provided by Esri, which you're probably familiar with a little bit. It's a GIS vendor with whom we're very familiar, and the county already works with. Our own GIS department uses a lot of their tools, and that's made it extremely cost effective. And this is just really a pretty simple basic tool for taking a measurement every 15 to 30 minutes of what the crowd looks like. You know, how long does it take somebody when they walk in the door, time that it takes from the door to the time where they're going to the voting booth. So that's an easy metric to measure with the Esri tool. And that will provide us a dashboard. The public will be able to see that online, but then also I think it's going to provide us some great data on the back end of just when are the busy times, when are people coming to vote early. So we're excited about that. And then finally, we have made the decision to move forward with watermark ballots in the early voting sites for this February 27 election. We're excited about the ability to do that. And mainly, initially we had, set the August state primary as our goal. And I'm excited to be able to do it early because I think that the main reason is that the number stub process of accounting for ballots is still happening in our precincts. So we're still moving forward with that accountability measure and accounting measure in precinct ballots and in absentee ballot situations. But early voting just doesn't have that option anywhere because of the way that early voting is structured. And so being able to be a little bit flexible and get a great vendor to provide watermark ballot stock for us ahead of schedule is going to be exciting. And we are going to be conducting a public test of all of this stuff on Tuesday, February 5. Come one and come all. We would love to have you there. We're excited about this public test too, because it's obviously being conducted under the auspices of the Election Commission, which by law is required to take place under the authority of the Election Commission. But we are also, the Election Commission has appointed, and I'll be deputizing 5 Republican and 5 Democratic election essentially assistants to help us with this process. And so while it's obviously open to anybody in the public, we're kind of getting a good bipartisan representation of folks who are going to be present, helping us test over 10,000 ballots on Monday, the 5th of February. So that is my quick update. A lot of stuff happening, but happy to answer any questions too.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Zalstra.
Thanks. Just on the locations, is that going to change going forward? Do you have any ideas on that or no?
So these locations are all locked in for 2024. So
Okay.
we will be utilizing the same date, time, days of the week, I should say, days and times and locations for our voters for February, August, and November.
Okay.
And the legal notice that was required to be sent out under the municipal agreement with the county, hopefully you guys got that. That was required essentially to be paid for by the locals, but mailed by the county. And we were able to save some dollars on that as well by getting a legal opinion from the Bureau of Elections that could be householded rather than sent to actual individual voters. I had a suspicion that our voters would be more upset than anything else if they were, 4 voters in the household and they're getting 4 cards mailed to them with the same information. And so we saved about $20,000 on that mailing alone. Yeah, so those locations are all the same.
Commissioner Miedema.
Couple questions on your public test. I think you had mentioned Tuesday, February 5, but then you said Monday. So
Yeah,
it
sorry,
February
it's
5?
Monday the 5th.
okay.
Yeah.
And then what's the location and time?
Here in the Fillmore Main Conference Room. So the public test is slated to take place at noon, but we will be processing essentially 1 precinct is required under the statute for the public test. So we will be here much longer than that 1 precinct. So you can actually come anytime from 9 to 4, but
Thank you.
yeah.
Commissioner Cosby.
Couple of things. So congratulations on the watermark ballots and having those
Yeah.
come early. Thank you very much for making that effort. Question for you, the certification of machines is that what's the expectation of machine certification? I know that was one of the issues of the previous, 2020 election.
Yeah, so the certification of the equipment is actually done at the state and federal level under the EAC and under the auspices of the Board of State Canvassers and the Vistal partners that are used, the basically certified labs that test and certify the equipment. So the equipment's all been certified previous to this, but the public test, the public logic and accuracy testing of equipment actually takes place before every single election. So every single piece of equipment that's used in any election is tested under these logic and accuracy standards, where we're running a series of ballots through, some of them correctly marked, some of them incorrectly marked, to ensure that the machine's counting the way it's supposed to.
Wonderful, thank you. And then I know you have been conducting some education, public education, correct, for voters? How well has that been attended?
Well, so our training kicks off on Thursday, and we are booked solid. So we have, I think we've capped it at 80 in the main conference room, just because of the spacing, and we're doing like hands-on stuff for our election workers. So we need to have a little bit of space in there. So we're at 80 folks. I know Thursday, Friday, and then into next week. And then we have early voting training that's also happening in the afternoons later this week, and then into the following week. And then some of the stuff too that we're trying to do just on the public education side. I think this election is kind of a confusing one for folks. And so we're trying to get the word out as much as possible. We did a little Facebook Live, like just kind of going through the basics, and that's had over 1,000 views in a couple of days. And so I think that's positive. Hopefully that's, getting the word out. But
So has that been recorded then? So people
Yeah.
know to look
Yeah, you
for
can
it,
go
they
back
look
and-
for it on the website under your department?
yes, so it's going to be in our newsletter that's going out in a couple of days. It's already on our social media pages. I don't think it's on the website currently.
And do you foresee any problems like with transportation or, I mean, you're doing a great job with communication, it seems like, but it's just, we can't help but over communicate when we're reducing to 4 different locations rather than precincts.
Well, it's definitely not a reduction. It's an expansion, and it's an expansion of 9 days
Right.
for people to vote. And on election day, they'll be voting in their same precincts. So there's no difference in the precinct process. So, absentee continues as is, obviously, precinct voting as is, and then the expansion of 9 days of early voting at these vote center sites. So no, the county is prohibited by law from providing transportation. But public now, thanks to some changes in the legislature over the past few months, other interested parties can provide transportation. So yeah, we try to stay out of that one.
Thank you.
Anything else? One question I had was related to the stock. I remember talking about this early, and you had questions on the stock and making sure you could run these through thousands, at a time. How did that work out?
So yeah, it's worked well for the early voting watermark ballots, and that's great. So we have our vendor, Hart InterCivic, actually has a partnership and a relationship with a paper company that provides watermark stock, and it's been approved by Hart InterCivic. It's been tested, obviously, many hundreds of thousands of times through their systems, but also we're going to be testing it extensively on the 5th as well. The challenge that we're facing is getting those printed ballots. So this is blank stock, right? That will be printed. And the challenge that we're facing is making sure that we have the right amount of paper stock with our print vendor that we have a contract with for printing our ballots. And that's still kind of what we're working through with that August deadline. But we're hopeful, very confident that we'll be able to do that.
Great.
There's a
Anything
lot of
else?
testing in our future.
I'm sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Justin. Really
Yeah.
appreciate the updates.
Absolutely.
And next up on the agenda is public comments. This is the opportunity for members of the public to come and address the board. Be given 3 minutes, and please address your comments to the chair. Do we have a list?
We do have 13 currently registered.
Great.
Public comment number 1 is Tom Parker, City of Zealand.
Is there a timer, Justin?
Oh, I apologize.
Just making sure.
There we go.
Okay. Good evening, Tom Parker, City of Zeeland. In Zeeland, our residents, its city council, and school board value good governance. My observation of the Ottawa Impact faction of the Ottawa County Board has shown with policy and words that they don't mirror our Zeeland values of good governance. Let us compare and contrast. Like Ottawa County, Zeeland City Council has several boards. Our boards include only one city council on each of the boards. The vast majority of our boards are made up of the residents. Contrast this with the current Ottawa County boards. Several are now stacked with many, or in some cases, a majority of Ottawa Impact commissioners. This means that county citizens with professional expertise and personal experience are no longer a majority, but a minority on these boards. Earlier this month, Joe Moss kneecapped Commissioners Bergman, Bonema, and Zylstra by decreasing their seats on county boards. As a resident of Zeeland, I stand with those who now lack fair representation. Why were these decisions made? Is this about dominance and control? This smells to me of cronyism, revenge, and insecurity. Our Zeeland city government seeks and values its citizens' input, not a stacked deck. We model and respect our US Constitution by reflecting we the people, not we the politicians and we the power hungry. When attending our Zeeland Public School Board meetings, I also witnessed good governance. Whether it's showcasing our award-winning robotics team, art department, or athletics, we see the work of students, staff, and community members being presented, praised, and celebrated. Contrast this with our county departments whose leaders and employees give updates and reports to you in this chamber. I've witnessed them being belittled, reprimanded, and questioned to the point of exhaustion. Our school board would never treat a teacher, principal, or staff member in such a dehumanizing and shameful manner. Despite any self-congratulations or patting himself on the back that Joe Moss may give himself and Ottawa Impact tonight, his poor leadership will never match all the good leadership which occurs in Zeeland. I invite you to come over for a visit and feel the zeal of good governance. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Number 2 is Luke Sanner, Park Township.
Hello, Luke Sanner, Park Township. I'd like to express my concerns regarding one of the proposed amendments to the county policy on policies. The policy currently requires a 2/3 vote to suspend operation of a board policy. The proposed change would allow a policy to be suspended with a simple majority vote. The summary of changes in the packet for tonight's meeting claims that this change is consistent with statute and board rules. I would challenge Mr. Gibbs to cite the portion of statute being used as justification for this change. I am unable to find anything that fits. In fact, MCL 46.3.1 states, a majority of the members of the County Board of Commissioners of a county constitutes a quorum for the transaction of the ordinary business. Ordinary business of the county. I would argue that suspending a standing policy does not constitute ordinary business, and that such an action should be held to a higher bar. Nothing in MCL 46.3 requires that this change be made. Changing an established policy with a simple majority vote only helps to pave the way for the chair's planned agenda. Yet again, Joe Moss wants what is best for him rather than for the people of Ottawa County.
Thank you.
Number 3 is Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township.
Good evening. Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township. Chairman Moss. The state of the county is making steady improvement. District members have been organizing. Political action committees are forming. Candidates are announcing. The state of the county is improving. Chris Kleinjans is the people's choice, a strong candidate who will bring closure to the grassroots recall in District 2. The state of the county is improving. Letters to the editor indicates growing concern with Ottawa impact and the tactics you peddle. The state of the county is improving. Hudsonville Mayor Mark Northrup announced his candidacy to run in District 5. The state of the county is improving. OC1, a group of grassroots concerned citizens in District 1, held launch meeting with seating capacity full. Ottawa Coalition of Unifying Congregations, Zealand Area Action Committee, On Track, North Ottawa Tri-Cities Action Committee are growing. The state of the county is responding. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Sunday, January 28th at 6:51 p.m., I received an email. It granted permission to mention the following. Rebecca Patrick has provided current and concise public comment. Many know her as someone who lives intentionally for excellence. She is a friend and will make a great commissioner for Allendale and District 8. Stay tuned, District 8. Rebecca had a prior commitment that did not allow her to be here. The state of the county is strong. The momentum builds. The future of Ottawa County is resilient. The tide has turned. It will take time and effort to repair the damage that you and Ottawa Impact have created. However, in your absence, it will be done. Lots of luck, Joe, with your state of the county. The who, the what, the where, the why, the when of Ottawa Impact is known. You can no longer sell vaporware.
Thank you.
Number 4 is Donna Mooney, Georgetown Township.
Good evening, Donna Mooney, Georgetown Township. I'd like to call attention to the case of Jody May of Granville, who was disciplining her 15-year-old daughter by taking the teenager's cell phone away when Jody was accused of stealing the phone by her ex-husband. Assistant Prosecutor Sarah M., who is running for county prosecutor in November, prosecuted Miss May before ultimately asking the judge to dismiss the case as it was going to trial. As a voter and a parent, I have some questions that I feel deserve answers from Sarah. Barring abuse or neglect, why would you prosecute a mother for disciplining her child instead of telling the father to take it back to family court where it belonged? What sort of investigation was done before this went all the way to a bench trial before finding out that the phone was a gift and requesting the charges be dismissed? As a parental rights advocate, it is unacceptable that we would put an innocent person through a criminal process that can have catastrophic consequences such as potential loss of child custody, job, livelihood, money spent on an attorney, and so on. I encourage every voter who values your rights as a parent to vote for constitutional attorney Greg Todd for county prosecutor. We must honor the rights of our parents and bring common sense back into this type of decision-making. In Ottawa County, we as residents are facing the shutdown and demolition of the J.H. Campbell Power Plant in May of 2025 without a reliable backup source of energy. Why aren't questions being asked about load shedding, which is the word salad to describe rolling blackouts that would be inevitable if this goes through? Where are the fields of solar panels that don't work in the winter? Will the privilege of charging a car be extended to those in apartment complexes with a charging station in each parking spot, or will that be reserved for only property owners who can afford it? How about those EVs in the freezing weather? We've gotten to a place where people truly believe that by giving up reliable sources of energy, such as coal and natural gas, that they're saving the planet because of propaganda being pushed throughout all forms of media 24/7. We might as well go back to before the wheel was invented. Maybe we can all just go back to riding horses. It'll be like we never advanced, except that horses fart, and that's killing the planet too. And maybe I would believe some of this con job if it weren't for the fact that the only scientists not censored are those pushing the government and the World Economic Forum driven climate narrative, all designed to control. I have a challenge for the media. Please ask your superiors if you can investigate and report on the World Economic Forum's actual one world government agenda. Please ask your superiors if you can investigate and report on the injuries and deaths caused by the COVID vaccine instead of the only side they will allow, which promotes it as safe and effective. I dare you to go against your media bosses to report on the other side of the debate. I guarantee they will shut you down, and that makes you a mouthpiece for controlled propaganda. The other side of the debate is also now called misinformation and disinformation. This is censorship. Find out who Klaus Schwab and Yuval Harari are, the snakeheads of the World Economic Forum, facilitating the destruction of life as we know it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5 is Sugnan Nango, City of Hudsonville. Certainly. Number 6 is Karen Obitz, Spring Lake Village.
Good evening, Karen Obitz, Spring Lake Village. As I was preparing this public comment, in which I intend to focus on what I expect to hear later tonight in the State of the County report, my thoughts went back to last week's meeting of the board's newly created Strategic Planning Committee. I'd like to begin by pointing to the inconsistencies I see between the track record of this Ottawa Impact Majority dominated board in incurring exponentially increased administrative costs with no observable positive return on investment, I might add, and the cost of service delivery approach to strategic planning championed at that Strategic Planning Committee meeting. Specifically, with respect to unnecessary administrative costs incurred last year, I'm referring to the firing of the former administrator and the choice to replace him with a political appointee who, in turn, hijacked established hiring practices in making more political appointments in Epperson and Wetmore, one of which resulted in yet another court case. I should point out that none of these 3 staff members have any previous municipal government experience, and it shows. In addition to the monetary costs related to severance packages and an inflated job description for the administrator's assistant, the costs associated with the loss of institutional knowledge that exited this building with John Shea and Patrick Waterman are incalculable. These costs represent just a small portion of what I saw last year in this Ottawa Impact Board's approach to governance that both revealed the costly and destructive results of willfully ignoring the inherent differences between government and private industry, and from doing so while guided by an ideology that insists on its own way by stacking the board's standing committees and the county's additional committees and boards with those who endorse that ideology. So what I wish I could expect to hear from Joe Moss during his delivery of the State of the County report tonight is an acknowledgement that he now sees how Ottawa Impact's wins at the ballot box have not translated into successful governance. I'd also like to hear an acknowledgement from him that ideologically framed campaign promises that result in worthless but divisive resolutions, court cases, and a concerning drop in county employee morale among the staff that haven't yet headed to the exit do not make for good governance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 7 is Deb Cizik, Port Sheldon Township.
Deb Cizik, District 1, Port Sheldon Township. Here's my take on the state of our county, despite what spin you're going to hear later in the meeting. Little has changed as we entered term 2, and this is only in the past month. 1, unprecedented departures and a great loss of institutional knowledge across many departments. As of yesterday, 19 of 39 job postings on the county website are for community mental health, public health, and fiscal services, with an average posting of 1 month and usually more. Continued micromanagement of county programs and well-qualified employees. After months of ridiculous questioning and stall tactics, contract extensions for social recreational programs were finally granted. That may explain why nearly half of the current unfilled job postings are in community mental health. 3, undermining the professionalism and experience of commissioners that do not align with your ideology, evidenced by standing committees that do not allow for equal representation among commissioners or their respective constituents. 4, removing a citizen position from the CMH board and replacing with a selected commissioner who already sits on multiple committees. So much for government overreach that OI said they would thwart. 5, lack of transparency. Although the contract with Ottawa states that those who sign on the dotted line will, quote, support steps to make county information public by default to increase transparency and accountability. Private information should be the exception for public servants, end of quote. We surely have hammered this topic to no avail, not to mention knowing that allegiance to a signed contract excludes many county constituents. Lastly, pending lawsuits, still costing taxpayers, still distracting from the job that you were elected to do. We are a divided community, which in a nutshell is the state of the county. We will continue to fight harder and smarter because Ottawa Impact is not the most transparent Board of Commissioners, as you would like to claim, but rather a blight on our vibrant community. You underestimated the persistence and intelligence of county citizens, well-versed in public policy and Robert's Rules of Order, who tirelessly hold you accountable for your neglect of duties to the residents of Ottawa County. We are long overdue for a return to good governance, fiscal responsibility, full transparency, and respectful leadership.
Thank you.
Number 8 is Joseph Parnell McCarter, Georgetown Township.
Reliable, affordable, environmental, electric power is something that should unite us all but Governor Whitmer's plan fails on all 3 counts. Attorney General Nessel sued Consumers Energy over the J.H. Campbell electricity plant located right here in Ottawa County that provides reliable electricity to 1 million people. This valuable plant will close in May 2025. It is closing even before we have things ready to take its place because Whitmer wants to close all coal-powered and hydroelectric plants. Her solutions are solar panels and wind turbines that are not reliable for West Michigan. Experts admit that our electric grid is at risk without coal and natural gas. Number 2, solar and wind energy will make electricity more expensive for West Michigan. Coal-generated electricity is much less expensive than solar or wind and is even less expensive than natural gas. We will spend more money to pay for our electric bill. Number 3, in the past 10 years, $1 billion was spent in cleaning up the Campbell plant with the intention of keeping it open to the year 2040. But there is no good plan for disposing all of the Chinese-made solar panels with toxic chemicals once their lifespan is over. And over 200,000 more acres of Michigan farmland will be wasted and become solar panel fields. Governor Whitmer and her team passed a law to overthrow the ability of towns to prevent these solar panel fields because Lansing will now take over local zoning laws. It is great for China because we buy their solar panels. Our factories and businesses will pay higher electric bills and American goods will be more expensive to compete with cheap products from China. The Save the Campbell campaign, Save the Campbell campaign is a grassroots effort by local citizens to keep the Campbell plant running. Local control via home rule charter is the only legal, effective way to do this. The county can initiate attaining a charter by getting 5% of county electors to sign a petition to put the question on the ballot. I would encourage all county citizens go to savethecampbell.com and select the menu option at top, add my name as petitioner signer. We are gathering a database of signers to sign petition forms so we get local control on the ballot. We are also using it to help gather signatures for Citizens for Local Choice so that townships can get back control of zoning in order to thwart exploitation. Go to savethecampbell.com to become a petition signer. We need to obtain more local control so that Washington, D.C. and Lansing do not impose a misguided agenda on us that makes us the losers and Communist China the winner. Finally, let's pray that God blesses us, for He alone is sovereign.
Thank you.
Number 9 is Sheila Detloff, Holland Township.
Good evening, Sheila Detloff, Holland Township. I'm not going to talk about a power plant that wasn't even providing power to Ottawa County. What I do want to talk about is John Gibbs's request for another $100,000 to have an outside vendor do something that frankly, he should be able to do himself, given his extensive resume. In the business world, you don't spend new capital unless you have a plan to pay it back. Nothing has been shown to date that he or you, Joe, have even considered this basic business fact. It raises a whole bunch of questions for me. When will the people of Ottawa County have a net positive cash flow from these projects? Just where is the break-even point on a $100,000 expenditure? Using John Gibbs's own metrics on cost per service, what is the ratio this purchase must meet in order to justify it? Does this purchase fit into John Gibbs's metrics? Has he even looked at it that way? Also, why the need to compare to other jurisdictions of similar sizes? Just what is he aiming to achieve with that? And how is he going to factor in all extenuating circumstances and idiosyncrasies of different jurisdictions? I can't wait to FOIA the documentation on that. We would not need to finance this additional $100,000 expense if we had a competent administrator. It's extravagant and unnecessary. You want to enhance cost per service? Hire a different administrator. But it sounds like you might be thinking about that anyway. And since I have some time left, I would also like to point out that Sylvia was apparently pretty confused about Robert's rules in the last meeting. I looked this up. She was attempting to defend Joe's kind of strange and self-serving habit of announcing how he's going to vote. In fact, what Robert's rules actually says is that the chair must remain neutral and should not participate in debate. And if they do decide to participate, they must relinquish the chair position until after the vote. Nowhere does Robert's rules recommend signaling to everyone else how you're going to vote. And the only purpose in stating what side of a motion you're on is so the chair can alternate debate between those for and against. You know, a copy of Robert's rules will only set you back about $20, and it's probably a much better cost per service ratio than $100,000. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 11 is Dina Arner, Holland Township.
Good evening, Dina Arner, Holland Township. I noticed on the agenda that you're going to give us a state of the county report tonight, Joe. How grand of you. I'm not going to say anything about delusions of grandeur. That would be unnecessary. But I would hope that you are at least honest in your state of the county and don't leave out some of the important accomplishments that you have to your credit for the past year. After all, not all of your endeavors were quite as successful as your bid to put Christina Caramo in charge of the Michigan Republican Party. So let's start with day one. When you guys started last January, the first thing you did was fire Commissioner or Administrator John Shea, racking up cost with his leaving the job early. He was a well-respected member of the staff here. We can tell he is a good administrator because he was snapped up right away by a neighboring district who was happy to have the benefit of his years of experience and his excellent work. Then you gave the job to someone who, as far as we know, did not apply for the job because there was no job listing. Surprise, surprise, so much for regular order. And for that, you chose someone who had already been rejected by the majority of voters in District 3, which overlaps with part of Ottawa County. So you already know how the people in this area feel about that administrator. And then he went on to prove what a good decision it was to hire him by immediately not being able to do the job that previous administrators had done and whining that he needed an assistant to do half of his job because apparently the job that he thought he was so overqualified for, turns out he was underqualified for it. But we still paid his salary, and then we set aside a salary for his assistant. And lo and behold, we listed all of these great requirements for this assistant. They should have a master's degree. They should have experience on a nonprofit board. And did you pick the person that met those requirements? No, because Mr. Gibbs needed someone who was younger than him so that he could boss him around. That is not the mark of a good administrator or a good boss, that they only feel that they can show authority over people who are younger than them. So great decision-making there. And also great decision-making, picking someone who does not meet hardly any of the qualifications for a job. That does not bode well for how your decision-making process goes. We could also get into your brilliant decision to let go the long-term legal authority here in the county and hire someone at twice the price, and then proceed to make decisions that make sure that we will have plenty of lawsuits so that they will get plenty of money. Makes us wonder how much you're getting in kickbacks, Joe. That might decision.
Thank you.
Number 12 is Harvey Nickel, Georgetown Township.
Thank you. I'm Harvey Nickel from Jenison. Thank you for standing up for our constitutional rights and freedoms. We have a real problem that is not being addressed by our health department nor investigated by the mainstream media. During COVID, we constantly saw real-time tickers on every news broadcast showing the COVID deaths. Now it's just crickets with respect to the number of people who are dying. The number of obituaries that contain the words "died suddenly" or "died unexpectedly" increased 63% in 2021 and 52% in 2022 as compared to 2020 during COVID. The number of athletes that died from cardiac arrest from 1970 to 2020 is 1,312. But the number who died in 2021 and 2022 is 1,598. In other words, in 2 years, 152% more healthy young people died than in the previous 50 years. In Israel, the number of cardiac arrests in 2021 increased by 192% from 2020, and in 2022 increased 431% over 2020. A naval medical officer analyzed the DMED data for fixed wing and helicopter pilots and found that myocarditis is up 151% and heart failure has increased a whopping 973% since the COVID shots were mandated on our military. Canada reports a 300% increase in unspecified causes of death, and at least 132 Canadian doctors have died suddenly or unexpectedly since the COVID-19 vaccine rollout began. In this country, the Society of Actuaries reported that life insurance payouts for deaths of 35 to 44-year-olds increased by 34% during the last quarter of 2022. In Ottawa County, the deaths in 2022 were 13% higher than they were in 2019. In 2023, the excess deaths in the US were 17% higher, 16% higher in Australia, and 14% higher in New Zealand. A United Kingdom study shows that the number of health insurance claims for hematological disorders is up by 522% in 2022 as compared to 2019. And another study shows that the cancer deaths have skyrocketed in young people of ages 15 to 44. Now researchers find that the shots are contaminated with DNA fragments. DNA integration poses a unique and elevated risk in human health and the integrity of the human genome. For that reason, the Surgeon General of Florida, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, has called for the halt of all mRNA C19 vaccines. Yet, the Ottawa County Health Department is still following the CDC narrative and is promoting the COVID shot as being safe and effective. It is not safe and effective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 13 is Alpha Mansray, Holland Township.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to address you this new year in 2024. I had a chance to reflect this past year what the Board of Commissioners for Ottawa County has accomplished. And I can say it is with such disappointment that really there was nothing of substantive value that was really achieved for our county and for the benefit of our citizens. And so as I look back this past year, we just celebrated a birth in where God, actually in the book of Luke 1:26, he approached a virgin and by the name of Mary. And then she was somebody who was going to birth something. Like so many of us, she's unlikely, she's unpredictable, unexpected, and unusual. So God had a greeting and announcement that said that you are highly favored and blessed. So she was called not by her name, but for her assignment. And so she was given the process of how this was going to take place. And one of the things that was not mentioned in that process was Joseph. And the subject of my comment today is somebody's got to tell Joe, no pun intended. One of the things that God did was that the pregnancy was going to be through Mary, a virgin, and then she's going to give birth to one thing and it's going to have a shift. The birth will give to everything. And one of the things that's really spectacular about that story is you cannot birth something of value and remain full. It requires you to be empty. God says she was blessed and highly favored. How can this be? She said, but we're told, don't get stuck on the how. Focus on the now, because the how will stop the now. So it's going to take a shift. So one of the things that she is really tasked with doing is really to keep pushing. So in the light of 2024, I hope you keep your mandate to just keep pushing because a pregnancy requires pushing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 14 is Emma Geringer, Spring Lake Township. Emma Geringer. And that would be the final public comment other than Sugnen Nango from the city of Hudsonville.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Sunan. I'm coming in from Hudsonville, Michigan. I'm a mother of two toddlers who are 3 and 2 years old, as well as a survivor of domestic violence. I'm currently fighting for custody of my 2 babies in an Ottawa County courthouse because I was married to someone who specifically married me to stay in this country and obtain immigration benefits. By the time I learned about this plan, I also learned that he had planned to send my children to a woman in Nigeria. And so I have been on a quest to keep both of my children safe from our abuser since I moved in 2022. And there are several questionable court officers in Ottawa County who have tried to dismiss me or sweep my concerns under the rug, even though I have concrete evidence. But I'm thankful that the chief judge is at least listening to me. There are many complicated facets of my case, and it has been an uphill battle, but I'm hopeful. I used to have an attorney, but after deep reflection, God gave me the courage to take this case on my own because there are just several facets of my case that I feel like would be best described to the justice system from my lips. And so I'm obeying his will for me in this case. And when this is behind me, I do want to help other people who have gone through the system. And right now, I'm just asking for your support. You may not know me at all, But if you are available, I'm asking that you show up at the courthouse in Grand Haven on February 20th at 9 a.m. in courtroom 2A. There will be a trial regarding this case, and my children do need your support, and I'm hoping you will help me keep them from getting trafficked. They're both American citizens and they were born on this soil. I am an immigrant. I came here at the age of 16. And as far as I'm concerned, this is now home, and my future is here. But I do ask that you show your support and you help me keep Iberia and Jasmine in this country, because they do need you. Again, you might just think I'm some strange woman with a strange accent, but I do need your support right now, and I'm asking you to show up. I'm thankful for all the work you've been doing. I've been reading about it in the news, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing you there. And my kids' futures depend on this, so I'm hoping that you will keep this in mind and show up. Thank you very much, and I have 27 seconds left, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Good evening, Dave Moore in Allendale Township. Well, it's been a year since I first got to meet most of you. And congratulations on making it a year. Who would ever thought, right? The lessons have been many. Most of them unfortunately undesirable. You've seen the worst of humanity, in my opinion, and very little of the best. I'm sorry. You found out things about your county that you had no idea and had great disappointments in. Some of you helped create these disappointments. Some of you have found that there's a better way, and I'm proud of you for that. I want you to remember something. A year from now, the odds are everybody here will be replaced. And I mean everybody. So your time and your position is limited. It's important you do what you're called to do. It's important who you follow, whose voice you listen to. You know, you hear all the complaints, the thorns and the darts that are cast about what a rotten person you are for following the rules. Making appointments when you're the one who's supposed to make the appointments. Shame on you. I've expressed my concerns to this board about different items. Those concerns are still real to me. Don't become your enemy. The mafia style government that is attacking you and has been in Ottawa County for probably my whole life needs to be destroyed. And I say that standing here with no fear, for I run from nobody. But I do know who the players are. And I know this much, no matter what happens to me, at the end time, every one of us will be judged as an individual. Not for what we did as a group, but what we did as a person, as a human being. Did we stamp on people and trample them to get ahead, to have a higher authority, have an easier life? Or did we reach down and lift up those that were trampled to get them out of the mud? Remember, when you make decisions, you need to have a reason for how you decide. Make sure it's something you can stand on and be held accountable for. Again, I thank you for all the time. I know you had no idea how much time it was going to take of your life or how many sleepless nights. And I know you never expected that you'd have to be perfect when you sat in that chair. Because anything less than perfect is just like a bunch of chickens attacking the one that's bleeding. They're relentless. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Excuse me, my name's Rich Dossman. I'm from Wright Township in Ottawa County here. And I don't have anything prepared to say, but I've heard a number of people make comments about a lack of accomplishment on the part of this board. I remember the environment that swept you into the offices that you hold. We were going through COVID and there were a lot of restrictions placed on us. And I do see what you've accomplished. You've laid the groundwork so that, you know, when, not if, but when something like COVID comes again, whether it's manipulated or just incidental, that this county can now have our back, because the previous administration didn't have our back when we wanted to exercise our constitutional rights. And that was one of the major reasons that many of us voted the previous commissioners out. So I thank you for all that you've done. I thank you for the groundwork that you've laid. I understand that it won't be apparent until the next crisis comes, but when it does, many of your detractors, I think, will be your supporters then. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Lori Grassman, Robinson Township. So I've noticed that the term good governance has been the new Christian nationalism lately, it seems. But now I look here tonight and I'm realizing that everybody thought that there was one majority and another majority, and there seems to be a lot up here that say that you guys have bad. There is no good governance in this board. Yet I have a whole room sitting behind me. I think good governance of this board has been amazing because this is what they voted for in 2022. And so I think your accomplishments have been amazing. I think that you guys have been steadfast and bold no matter what they throw at you. And if they're going to continue to throw lawsuits, that's on their head. Good governance is transparency. The fact that we can see the budget every single time it gets put into the packet, all the way down to McDonald's receipts. That is transparency. I don't know what else transparent needs to be. Good governance is this board. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Good evening, Chairman, fellow commissioners. I'm here
Sir,
as
can I have
not
your
to
name and
criticize
your name and
anything.
jurisdiction?
I'm here to talk about the issue of the.
Could you please,
Campbell- Sorry.
could you please state your name and jurisdiction?
Sorry, yeah, sorry. A lot of them know me, some don't. Chuck Richard, I'm a former Muskegon City Commissioner, as well as the city of Norton Shores. We face the same opposition or the same problem with the BC comp plan. And so that's what I'm here to speak about, your Campbell plan and why. The particulate that was coming out of there was well within the standard. I mean, never even approached it. By the way, I didn't tell you also that I'm a rocket scientist, and I'm a chemist from background. So you get an idea, and a vice president of aerospace. So I come with a lot of credentials. We only need to talk about, let's talk about the issue. The Campbell plan. I don't know what the affluent is or the particulate is. I haven't seen it, but I would tell you that the things you need to consider are what happens if you shut that plant down. You need to understand where you're going to get those jobs, where they're going to go, number one. Where is the revenue that's provided by that plant to the local community, either in government bodies, county body, the school systems? Those are the things. We lost over $1 million, okay, because of that, okay, as a result. So that's one thing. But what about the power? What about where are you going to get that power? You are not going to capture that with solar energy or wind energy or anything else. You cannot achieve that. I can guarantee you that. But there's a problem with that. They went outside, they bought it on the grid. Well, that went out of state. You charge the citizen, and I guarantee if you go this route, the citizen should come after you. They really should, because you've outsourced jobs at that point, and you've also increased their cost. That is not your role. That's not the role of government. You're actually to consider the people themselves. We the people, we hear that so often. So I'm not criticizing you. Please remember that. I'm trying to give you a perspective. So let's look at what happened. They did that. Well, everyone now in the governor, the good governor, yeah, right, is saying, you know, get rid of it and go to green. Let's talk about the solar panels. That seems to be the most popular lately. Are you aware of the problems with solar panels? I apologize if I'm going to go over a little bit if I can. I'll complete the point. With the solar panels, there are 4 types. They all come from China. The top 10 are from China. But the one you got to worry about is the third one. It's called cadmium telluride. It's compounded in the kidneys. If you do that, you are dooming your children to health problems long term. I'm telling you, cadmium is not an element you want to mess with. Telling you that as a chemist. I'm telling you that why it's like mercury, guys. And please consider that because the other types aren't so bad. I mean, they aren't as bad, but they have some drawbacks. And there are some new ones coming up. Okay. But the ones that are currently on the market. And by the way, I told our township that was going to do it, that I would sue them personally as individuals, not as a government body, but as an individual. I would come at them for harming. So that's why, but please consider that. If you want, I was going to pen a letter to you guys.
Thank
Tell
you.
Some of the, okay?
There's a second public comment time as well coming up on the agenda. If you'd like,
All right,
like
thanks.
to continue. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board? All right, there is a second public comment time later on in the agenda. But for now, we'll move to number 6, approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved. Oh, second.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? We're going to go to a roll call vote since we have one commissioner participating remotely.
Sir, sorry. Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Bonham,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Eden,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
And motion passes.
Thank you. Next up is consent resolutions. Could I please get a motion to approve the consent resolutions?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? This will be the same. We will need to go to a roll call vote on these as well.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bonham,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Number 8, agenda and action requests. 8A, county policy on policies, a second reading. The suggested motion is to approve the revised county policies policy.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Commissioner Zylstra.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. I know this is a second reading. We've kind of looked at this a few times. Jack, can you just kind of walk us through the majority vote situation? Looking at MCL and frankly, I'm kind of confused about when we can use 2/3, when majority applies, et cetera.
Sorry about that. Under the, now let me get to it. Kind of catch me off guard there.
No, sorry about that, Jack. I didn't mean to.
It's okay. Everything that I see in MCL 46 has majority.
Right.
It does not have anything written in there as far as a 2/3 majority. In fact, 46.3, as has already been cited, a majority of the members of the county board of commissioners of a county constitutes a quorum for the transaction of ordinary business of the county. So that in a nutshell speaks about how you can vote. You don't need a you don't need a 2/3 majority.
Right.
A simple majority is enough.
Right, and I think that's kind of borne out by section 2, where it talks about shall act by the majority.
Correct.
Just that last sentence I kind of been looking at the last day or so. Second to last sentence where it says, The county board of commissioners may require in its bylaws that 2/3 on a non-agenda item, and I just can't, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not sure what a non-agenda item might be. It would seem like if it's on the agenda, that's something we're voting on, but if it's not on the agenda, how would we vote on it?
I don't know, but
Okay.
the key word that I see in there
Mhm.
is may.
Okay,
It's not a shall.
right. Yeah, I just wanted to get clarification on that. I
Yeah.
think like, yeah, the second reading on it, I think it's 99% clear that we vote always by majority, just that last
Yeah,
non-agenda item phrase is kind of throwing me, so
I
appreciate
wasn't
that.
with the legislature when they did that.
But you were,
I was
oh,
not.
you were, okay.
I just want
I
to
was
make.
like, wow,
make-
you really kind of told me what you were thinking that.
I just want to make sure it's clear.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
I had those same questions, but fine.
Okay, Commissioner Belknap.
Just a quick comment and gratitude to our administration for laying out a well prepared, model of the old language versus the new language, what's changed. I think it really assisted the committee in moving this policy forward. That's it.
Thank you. Anything else, or we'll go to another roll call vote? Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
No worries. Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. E.
I'm sorry. Did you say Bonham or Belknap?
Bonema, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I apologize.
Sorry. Okay. Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Berg,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Kerman,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we're up to 9A, committee reports, and first up, the only one is Department of Equalization. O'Brien, come on down.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to share the equalization report with you tonight. I know this is what you've all been waiting for, so glad we could finally get to it. The equalization report is a little bit different from maybe some of the other department reports in that we do 3 reports for the equalization. We do the equalization report, which is in April. We do the apportionment report, which will come in October. And then this report, which you'll be receiving tonight, which is more or less an overview of what my department does. So, and also just before we get started, I just wanted to congratulate, I know she's not here, but this will be the first time I will be presenting before Commissioner Wenzel. So congratulations on your appointment. So I'm going to be covering this evening the 5 primary functions of the equalization department. Some of them are statutory, some of them are contractual, but I'll just be covering the 5 primary components that we do. I also hope to touch on a few cost of service delivery comparisons. I know that is something that Administrator Gibbs has been asking for, and so I hope to touch on a couple of those. And lastly, I'll be covering just kind of a quick overview of what you might say, what the determinations of our department was this year. So going forward, what the values will be. So the first thing, equalization, obviously, this is the namesake of our department. Equalization is essentially a study of the market. What is the real estate, both real and personal property? What are the values doing? We study that 2 different ways. If there are enough sales available, we look at the sales and we do a sales study. With a sales study, we compare the sale prices to the assessed values. and determine a ratio to say how much do we need to go up or down in order to meet market value. If we don't have enough sales, then we do an appraisal study. And appraisal studies in Ottawa County is largely used for agricultural, commercial, and industrial classes of property, whereas the sales studies are done in residential where we have ample sales to do a study. The overall function, though, of both, regardless of which method we use, is simply to study the market. What is the market telling us? Some statistics that we can look at. The equalization studies, if you look at the graph on the left, we're looking at the sales that my clerks have processed this year. And if you look at the top line, that is the total number of sales that they have processed historically. I think we're looking at about a 20-year window there. And you can see the last couple of years, the amount of sales that we've been processing has been decreasing. We started to notice that trend last year, and that trend has been continuing this year. And I'll be touching on this a little bit later in the presentation as well. The line underneath it, though, is the amount of sales that we're using in our equalization study. And you can see that that line, while it does drop off, it does not drop off nearly as much as the overall sales. And what that tells me is that we are still seeing a good amount of what we would call usable sales or arm's length sales that represent the market, which is a good thing for equalization. The graph on the right is showing the amount of appraisals that are conducted each year by my appraisal staff. They do great work, and as you can see, that's a lot of appraisals for 3 appraisers to do in a year. The second primary function of the equalization department is apportionment, and apportionment is another statutory requirement of our department. Apportionment in our department is largely aiding and auditing. So we're aiding the local units in developing their millage rates to be applied, and then we audit them to make sure that they are compliant with all applicable laws. Again, I present all of that to the commissioners in October. In 2023, I presented the apportionment report, and then we revised it again in November. And if you remember, that was because the Jamestown Township Library millage was passed after the apportionment report was approved. So then we came back in November and approved that. The third primary function of the equalization department is property description and mapping. This is largely done by two gentlemen in our department that are mappers. And if you are familiar with anything related to GIS and you pull up a map and you see the parcel lines on there, those lines get there by these gentlemen. And they do a fantastic job both drawing the lines on the GIS software and also writing legal descriptions, just making sure that the process flows smoothly. The property description and mapping guys, just a few statistics about what they've done this past year. You can see as you look through those numbers, they're just a little bit down. Again, because of the amount of deed recordings is down, we have not seen as many properties being split and combined. And so their work volume is down a little bit. But overall, those are still pretty healthy numbers if you look at it over a historical average. So how are we doing, right? The equalization department, we had talked about our cost of service delivery. There is no comparisons that I'm aware of that are readily available. So this is information that I went out to other equalization departments and I just looked for a unit of comparison that can say, how are we doing compared to other counties? What I found or what I explored is what is our budget as a percentage of the county general fund. And as you can see on there, as the budget decreases, or I guess I'm saying that wrong, but as the parcel count increases, Ottawa County Equalization's budget as a percentage of the general fund is comparatively slightly lower than counties of comparable size. So we're not that much lower. I'd say overall, we're doing about average, but based on the size of our county, we're doing pretty well. Our fourth primary function is local unit assistance. And this is something that is, while it is statutory, it is a little bit more something that we may provide. It is not something that we necessarily have to provide, but this is something that my department has always taken quite seriously, that we find that we're providing a better service to our taxpayers if both the county and the assessors work together. And we do that by providing technical assistance. We provide assessing procedural guidance. We work on standards with the assessors, a number of things that we can do just to work together to make sure that we're all on the same page. One of the things that I wanted to mention in this category is my deputy, Josh Morgan, won an award with the Michigan Association of Assessors for the Stronger Together Mentorship Award. He won that last fall for his work with mentoring our local assessors. There's a component of what we do called developing land values, and that tends to be fairly complicated. And he is frankly exceptionally good at that function. And he uses that talent to teach our local assessors how to do a better job. And he won an award for it. So I just wanted to mention that this evening. And then lastly, assessing, which this is not something that we are statutorily required to provide. This is something that we provide contractually. We were approached in all of these instances by the local jurisdictions, asking if we would provide this service for them. As you can see on there, we provide assessing services for 5 jurisdictions: Grand Haven City, Crockery Township, Hudsonville, Blendon, and Coopersville. And we've had some of those contracts going back, I'm going to say, over a dozen years, and some of them we've only had for a couple of years, but they're all going quite well. We had one jurisdiction approach us in 2023, asking us if we could provide that service for them. We provided them a number, but they just ultimately decided to go a different direction, which we are totally fine with. If they're able to provide their service themselves, or they feel they can do a better job, then fantastic. So, and then additionally, we renewed one contract that was Blendon Township this past year in 2023. And just kind of as we look forward, 2024 is the year that we'll be renewing all 5 of our jurisdictions now. So later this summer, we'll be sending out our quotes to the local units and hopefully approving five new contracts later this summer. Assessing. As part of providing that service, we need to visit 20% of the properties in each of those jurisdictions. And this is just providing you a graph showing you how many inspections we've done of those properties. And you can see that's a lot of inspections. We've got 2 full-time staff members that are working on that just to make sure that we're accurately relaying what is on those properties. So another cost of service delivery, how are we doing with assessing? This is something that there was a little bit more information on. I looked both to the international standards. There was the International Association of Assessing Officers. They're obviously the international standard, and they publish this information to say how many parcels per full-time employee is expected. And as you can see on the graph, based on their two different standards, 3,600 and about 3,100, and our average, I threw in a couple of states in there that were available, that had information available as well. And you can see that we're at about 3,400, almost 3,500 parcels per FTE, which is right in line with the standard. So that is a good indication that we're, you might say, right sized for what we're doing. So what were the results of the equalization study this year, right? After we've studied the market, what were the results? This grid here, or this display, is showing what the ratios and multipliers are This grid will be published in the newspaper. I think we use Grand Rapids Press. That will be published about a week from now, as is done every year. And as you can see on this grid, for those who aren't familiar with it, the easiest way to understand it is to look at the factor line and then move the decimal place over two places. You can see on there, those are pretty substantial increases. Like for instance, if you look at Allendale Charter with residential, that's a 13% increase in residential. And that's in 1 year, a 13% increase. Countywide, if you take the culmination of all of the residential parcels, we're looking at a 13.78% increase in 1 year. So last year we had substantial increases, and that's following suit again this year. I'd just like to point out, though, even though the assessed values are rising substantially, the taxable value, which is what everybody cares about, is capped at 5% again this year. So inflation last year was 7.9%, and we capped it at 5%. This year, inflation was 5.1%, which means, again, it's capped at 5%. So good, but still it's 5% increase, so that people will notice that. One of the things that I wanted to mention here is that this is done based off from a 2-year sales study. And I'm hoping in the next slide here to explain what a 2-year sales study is and why we do it that way. Because this is something that I would say I get asked quite often, how much is the market dropping? And as you can see on the previous slide, I'm presenting to you that the market is not dropping. And when people come to me and they say, well, how much is the market dropping? We need to be able to defend that. And I think part of the reason that people at least feel the market is dropping is because if you go on Zillow or MLS or whatever your favorite website is, quite often you see price cuts, right? That they're listed for whatever dollar amount, and then they cut the price. And certainly we're seeing an increase in days on market and those types of indicators. But from an assessing standpoint, we're looking at what are they selling for? And I want to explore also how we get to the numbers that were on the prior slide. So the first thing that we look at is we need to establish a date of valuation. Now, the Constitution in Michigan says that valuation date is December 31st of the year prior. So for us, that date occurred 31 days ago. That's our valuation date. That's the date that we're looking at. If we were doing an appraisal, perhaps for a bank appraisal or something like that, we would say, well, what comparable properties are we going to use to establish what the value of these properties are? And typically you would look at and say, well, let's explore a 6 or 12-month time frame. Let's look at sales that occurred shortly after our valuation date or shortly before, and let's use those sales to establish what market value is. With property taxes, it doesn't work that way. And the reason for that is because we could potentially be pulling sales after our valuation date that are indicating that the market is even higher than it is. And we always want to give the benefit to the taxpayer. So we don't want to run the risk of overshooting what the market is. We want to make sure that we're always conservative. So we don't do an exploration of sales before and after the date. We actually look at sales over a 2-year time period. And you can see on there, we're going back 2.5 years from our valuation date and exploring a 2-year window there. What that does then is it puts the midpoint of our sales 18 months prior to our valuation date. So if you're going to take the average of those sales, that's 18 months prior. Could I get that grid back up there, maybe, Jordan?
Just having some live stream issues, so I think this is
Okay,
going
no
to fix
problem.
it. Apologies.
One of the things that for those of you who are looking at it mathematically, if the midpoint of our sales is 18 months prior and the market is going up 10%, that means we're automatically under assessing by 15%. So kind of keep that in mind when you look at the market. When I say it's going up 13.78%, that indicates that next year is likely also going to be going up considerably more because those sales have not even been fully used yet. Can we get it or no? It's okay. So one of the things that we like to look at, so when we're exploring a 2-year time period, one of the things that you might say that might bring you concern is what happens if the market turns right at the end of our 2-year time period. We've got a 9-month gap in there between when our sales window ends until our valuation date. What if August 2008 occurs right there, right at the March 2023? Or maybe more pertinent to today is what if interest rates started out on a 30-year fixed mortgage at 3.1% 2.5 years ago, and then moved to 6.25% at the end of that window, and then 6 months after that up to 7.5%, right? As those interest rates climb, one would expect as that money gets more expensive, you might say, that the assets that they're pursuing would have to come down in price. So what my concern always is has the market turned, right? After our valuation date there, has the market turned? And one of the things that the state requires is that we explore, we don't have to use the study, but we have to explore a 1-year study where we're taking into account what if something occurred after that time. We prefer a 2-year study because it's very conservative in our estimates. We're almost guaranteed to be low. But if the market turns, we want to always look at a 1-year study to say, okay, if the market turned, this would reflect that. And if the 1-year study indicates a lower value or indicates the market is declining, then we use the 1-year study over the 2-year study. Does that make sense? Always to make sure that we're not over assessing, and if the market is turning, that we're reflecting it sooner. The advantage, of course, then is the midpoint, instead of being 18 months in the past, it's 9 months in the past, and we're taking advantage of the more current sales. So what was the result then, right? What is the result? We have a 2-year study and a 1-year study. The 2-year study showed almost a 14% increase. The 1-year study, fortunately or unfortunately, showed not only that the values are continuing to increase, but they're increasing at a faster rate, which means even next year, we're likely to be using a 2-year study and seeing substantial increases. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Brian. Very glad this is your job. Thank you for your expertise. Also, thank you for mentioning the award. Please pass on our congratulations. Commissioner Cosby?
Just a quick question, Brian. So does that mean that, so you can do a 2-year study, that's the standard, but you have a 1-year option here? You can take the better of the 2 outcomes then?
We have the option. I guess I'm a little hesitant to say the better of the 2 outcomes because I guess depending on where you're sitting, better could be defined differently. What we're looking at with a 1-year study is to say, is the market declining? Okay. And obviously, based on what I just said, the market is not declining with a 1-year study. It's actually doing the opposite. It is climbing at a faster rate than the 2-year study.
The values of the homes are.
Values of homes, correct.
Okay. Not number of sales. Thank you.
Commissioner Belknap.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate the information. You talked about the studies and looking at properties by their property class.
Yes.
And sales. Does part of the study, do you ever look at the rates of sales by the various property classes? In other words, is agricultural properties selling at the same rate as industrial or commercial, or is there any kind of trends that you're seeing across the different classes?
I'm not positive if I understand the question behind your question, but we equalize all classes of property separately. So we equalize the residential class separate from the agricultural class, separate from the commercial class. So yes, we are looking at all of the agricultural sales, and we're using those sales to help us equalize that market, separate from the commercial, separate from the industrial.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
I guess my question might be more along the lines with, is there like a percentage of, you know, are you seeing one particular class more active in sales than another class? And the reason why I bring it up is, as you drive around the county, we see a lot of agricultural lands, and a lot of them have, you know, for sale signs. And I know in our county, we spend a lot of time and effort on, you know, agricultural preservation and, you know, education and the, you know, Farmers Bureau and that type of thing. And it's just kind of a curious thing. Are we seeing a lot of movement in our agricultural properties?
I will say maybe more anecdotal. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but my perception has been that the sales volume has slowed with agricultural properties.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Thank you very much, Brian.
You bet. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we're on number 10, public comment. Is there anyone who would like to address the board?
Donna Mooney, Georgetown Township. While some in the media and even the mayor of Hudsonville attempt to malign and smear every Republican in this county as being right-wing extremists, I want to remind everyone that the uniparty Democrats and rhinos have been in charge of Michigan since 2018 and the federal government for 3 years. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm an American citizen, and I encourage every concerned citizen to stand in unity together against our infiltrated government that is not working in our best interests. The best disinfectant for darkness is sunlight, and even that they are trying to control. See geoengineeringwatch.org for the government patents on that subject. They are responsible for lockdowns, threatening forced untested vaccinations while colluding with Big Pharma, also known as fascism, planning the release of their new election year virus dubbed Disease X, involving the US in foreign wars, sending trillions of taxpayer dollars overseas, facilitating a border invasion that promotes human and fentanyl trafficking, with millions of military-aged men pouring into the country to the extent that city governments are booting children from their schools to house them, and they're asking residents to take them into their homes. Texas and 23 other states, meanwhile, are finally stepping up to close the border, which the Biden administration continues to fight to keep open for the sole purpose of importing a slave class that will fraudulently vote to keep these criminals in power, all the while pointing the projection finger at anyone who opposes them. The state of the economy can be found in your own grocery receipts, and they smile and tell you the economy is getting better and that inflation is only 3.4% when the cost of eggs is twice as much and many other products are at 33% or more. Our out-of-pocket medical expenses continue to skyrocket for those not receiving free health care. They continue shutting down energy and forcing people into unreliable and unaffordable wind and solar, speech control, lawfare of political opponents, and an obvious two-tier justice system and continual attacks on individual rights. When anyone tries to point any of this out, all we get is "but Trump." Trump hasn't been in office in over 3 years. At what point do you take responsibility for your vote that put the politicians in place who have created these policies? When do you start caring about your own family and community instead of forcing people who can no longer afford to keep up with the skyrocketing cost of living to continue funding this bill? You've disregarded all of this, but you own it. Please put your virtue signal where your mouth is and offer to fund this yourself and take these young military-age males into your homes with your family. For everyone else who's had enough, please remember the chaos, destruction, and misery that's being created by these people and stand with us at the ballot box to try to put an end to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Hi, Sheila Detloff, Holland Township. So coming up in the State of the County lecture, Joe Moss might brag about getting broadband through when the previous board couldn't. when in fact the previous board approved $7.5 million in ARPA funds for the project, which is what Moss used for the county contribution. After a holdup with grant money, this board voted on it on December 12th, but we were all holding our breaths since the grant money came from the Coronavirus Capital Projects Fund, and we all know how Joe feels about COVID money, unless it's going straight into his pocket. Moss is also probably going to brag. Can you get your little peanut gallery to quiet down back here?
If the audience could please allow the speaker to continue, that would be great.
Joe Moss might also brag about getting the fire foam trailers. In fact, he has Commissioner Bonema to thank for that, who talked to the Director of Emergency Management and pushed the issue, and then made sure all concerns and questions from the public and from commissioners were addressed. Moss might also brag about getting body cameras for the sheriff's office. In fact, if you look at the capital improvement plan that it was approved last year, body cameras were listed as a currently approved project, meaning the funding for the cameras was approved in a previous year. As of today, there are still no body cams being used in Ottawa County. Moss might also brag about expanding the Department of Veterans Affairs and hiring a director. In fact, the method he used to hire that director may have been illegal. Michigan statute MCL 35.623 states that the board can create the department, but administration is under the Veterans Affairs Committee, including appointing a director or veteran service officer. Basically, all the statute allows the board to do is create the department and provide building space. Moreover, Kendra Wenzel sits on the committee, but she was never properly appointed by the Board of Commissioners as is required. So if there's anything that you should be bragging about, it might be your uncanny ability to screw up twice over one thing. There's more, of course, that I'm sure will come up in your speech: a constitutional county resolution that's not worth the paper it's printed on, a childhood innocence resolution that aimed to take parental rights away from people you don't like, eliminating the DEI department, which created multiple concerns among businesses that are located in or want to locate in Ottawa County. So what's the state of the county? Well, for now, we still have a AAA bond rating, thanks to the previous board's hard work and in spite of you trying your best to knock it down. But check back on that again in a couple months. As long as Joe Moss and Sylvia Rohde are in charge, the only thing imploding faster than the county's reputation is the Michigan GOP.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Hi, Gwen Foss from Perrysburg. I just wanted to mention that if we are providing scientific data, I think that the sources should be cited. And I'm responding to Mr. Nichols' comments earlier, which had a lot of facts that are really misquoted and mistaken. A Mayo Clinic physician, Dr. Ackerman, who has studied sudden death for over 25 years, says that despite a lot of social media rumors, they are not seeing an increase in deaths in young athletes. This is multiple studies, the fact checking shows it. He referenced a recent study that he calls junk science. The report said that more than 1,500 athletes have died in the past year of cardiac arrest due to COVID-19 vaccine. It's not true. He said that's simply not true. We know that in the United States, 75 to 100 healthy athletes from Little League, junior high, varsity, collegiate, who die suddenly each year, and that number has not changed. In fact, the sudden cardiac death rate in athletes has declined in recent years. So another study published in Circulation, a multi-center study that looked at the deaths of athletes over 20-year study. And when they looked at the 8 cases that were attributable to myocarditis over the study period, one case from January 1st through June 3rd, January 1st, 2020 through June 30, 2022, none were attributed to COVID-19 infection. Sudden cardiac deaths, sudden myocarditis occurs with multiple viruses. We know that's true. It is not typically something that causes death. It does resolve. University of Michigan Pediatric Cardiology have been involved in studies of the MRIs of NCAA athletes looking at the myocarditis incidents. Those myocarditis that occurs with vaccine have not resulted in deaths. So I would just like to say, I think it's important that we look at science that is peer reviewed and that is documented by people with expertise in the area of which they're speaking. And I, for one, am grateful for my family, for my patients, that I was living in a place where we were responding to the restrictions. It is really important to know that our vaccine rates have gone down, as you know, because of the misinformation. We are now seeing a rise in pertussis, in measles. This is just not the way it should be. The United States did not perform well during compared to other developed nations.
Thank you.
Death and disability insurers and the actuaries are the ones that.
Dave Moran.
Welcome.
The first thing I'd like to address is the Campbell plant. I would like you to remember something. The nation that has the cheapest power is going to be the strongest nation in the world. Expensive energy puts a burden upon the people of the lowest financial ability. We have a lot of people that believe in the American dream. We shouldn't let government mandates stand in the way of people achieving the American dream. Green energy, while it may make people feel good about themselves, is not efficient, is not desirable, and will not sustain this economy or this country. It's time we start using common sense instead of worrying about how people feel about whether they're comfortable or not. That being said, I haven't brought this up in quite a while. But I did mention to you how everybody here could be replaced next year. And you've also heard me mention about my favorite subject, the Ottawa County Road Commission. Many of you I've sat down with and showed you documents from the court case, showed you some of the lies they used and the deceit that was used. And some of you responded back and said, well, David, it seems to be political in nature. And I'm not going to disagree with you. Matter of fact, my neighbors said the same thing. The ones that are more experienced than me, meaning they're older, I'll use experience. And just that fact should scare the living daylights out of everybody in this place. So if you stand up for truth and it goes against the county commissioner's will to develop a piece of property against the local zoning, you're going to pay hell. And this board's going to accept that. Are you going to let every one of these people experience what I've experienced? You have within your abilities to change what is. You have within your abilities to change what could be. I know, not very nice, but I am being what I say. I have a video of my favorite driveway, and I'm going to forward to every board member. And the next time I get the chance, I'm going to come and we're going to discuss it. I'm telling you right now, you have within your ability within the next 9 months to fix a wrong in this county. Dissolve the Ottawa County Board of Road Commissioners. Make it part of your responsibility where these people have elected officials that they can go to when they're wronged. You want to know who I get to go to when I'm wrong? Nobody. You think the health department was bad? Ha. So now let's take the scales off our eyes and look at reality. I'm proud of you for what you've done, and you know I've said that. There's a big issue here that you need to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
My name is Justin Compagner, Park Township. I don't really have anything prepared, but I did hear some stuff that I kind of wanted to have some politically incorrect comments about. Heard a lot of people going on about Zealand. I don't know why people think it's so great. School system's horrible, ran by a bunch of hippies. They just shove kids through grades. Anyway, whatever. Probably spend all their time listening to the Beatles. And a lot of people have a lot to say about you guys as our newly elected commissioners, but how you don't know how to do your jobs or whatever it may be. I'm sure that they do everything life perfect themselves, so they have all the room for that judgment. And I don't know why they're not mad that you're not corrupt like everybody before. They were like, wow, we love that corruption that we didn't know anything about, didn't care to do anything for. We love being blind. Let's go back under our rocks. Speaking of which, I hear a lot of energy wasted also attacking others. I don't hear a lot of support necessarily unless it's one side or the other. It's unfortunate that, there's only one cool side of the pillow. Wish we could all get along a little better. So yeah, I always come up here and support you guys. Keep up, the great work. And we understand you're all human and none of you probably wanted to be here. So, you stepped up and did what we all couldn't, I guess. So thanks a lot. And thank you, Chris and Boris, for the great idea of coming up here and thanking everybody.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Luke Sanner, Park Township. I've got a few comments. Before I get to them, though, I just like to welcome Amy PA, Amy Albin, ROI, whatever she calls herself these days. We raised $220 in donation pledges for the Chris Kleinjans campaign because of her presence. So thank you. So a few things. You can watch it on YouTube. $220. You're not the chair, be quiet. A few things the residents of Ottawa County should keep in mind when listening. Can you shut your peanut gallery up, please, Joe? And stop smirk into your glass?
Oh, please go ahead and continue.
When your peanut gallery stops, I will. A few things the residents of Ottawa County should keep in mind when listening to the chair's State of the County. The money the county has spent on lawsuits caused by the actions of the board and its employees. Maybe even another from Mr. Gibbs himself. We'll see. When does that letter come out? Resolutions. The only thing most of these serve to do is increase use of the word whereas. Most are meaningful, most are otherwise meaningless. The one that is actually meaningful to many in our county and is a longstanding tradition is the Adoption Day resolution. And this almost didn't happen due to the board's ongoing vendetta against the health officer. Closure of the DEI department. This brought concerns from local employers in the county and is costing grant money that would have benefited everybody, not just people who are in the minority. The Veterans Director. Did we need this position? Sylvia seemed to think so, but based on what? Not data, at least not that we were shown. By all means, let's give our veterans the support they deserve. But this is simply a matter of solving problems that don't exist to score political points. The Ottawa Food Coordinator position. We're still waiting for Mrs. Cosby to put the request to fund this position on Finance and Administration agenda. Finally, our new county motto, where freedom rings. Currently, the sound of freedom on Ottawa Impacts Watch rings hollow.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Welcome.
So Harvey Nickel from Georgetown Township. I didn't quite finish the last sentence about the vaccines. The fact that our health department is still pushing them and they are not safe, they're not effective. You may have noticed that almost all of the data that I gave you is not from this country except for the life insurance ones. That's because you can buy a lot of money with $250 billion of big pharma, which they would have lost from this vaccine if they had allowed ivermectin and budesonide to be used. So we have heard from the beginning, trust the science. But yet there are numerous scientists out there that can't publish because they cannot get any papers accepted because it does not match their narrative. Piece of information. December 31, a 23-year-old Jenison alumni had heart stopped. He died 3 days later. I think last summer, a young girl from Grand Haven had a heart attack while playing soccer in Chicago. A little over 2 years ago, a 16-year-old Jenison student had a stroke. Have you ever heard of this? Why is it now? I don't know if they've been vaccinated, but why has not this been investigated? Why hasn't the health department simply asked every family whose person died these last 2 years, have they been vaccinated? Why not ask anybody who goes into the hospital, what's your vaccination status? That's known, but it doesn't match the narrative. Also, as far as data, out of England, they've done studies from the data of the government, looking at the number of people who have been vaccinated and the number of COVID-related deaths. Those people in England who've received one dose is 85%, yet the COVID-related deaths is 95.3%. It is not effective. Those who have received 3 doses of the vaccine are 65% of the population, but yet they contribute 90% of the COVID-related deaths. There is data out there. There are doctors talking. If they can keep their license, they'll keep talking. Otherwise, the medical boards are coming after them because they're speaking against the narrative. It is a huge problem of this country.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Aaron J. Compagner, Precinct 1, Jamestown Township. First off, I want to thank the board again. Your duties are, I wouldn't want the job. We do appreciate everything you guys do. What you have given up, the attacks. I know it's extremely difficult. I understand. So thank you, board. I also want to piggyback off a bit off of Harvey. And I would ask that the people who think that the jabs are good, I would urge you to go online and take a look at the videos, really hundreds of them, of athletes from middle school all the way up to the pros who just drop dead playing sports. It's shoots happen to referees. They just drop dead on the court. You explain that to me. Tell that to their families that it wasn't the jab that did damage. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Dina Arner, Holland Township. I just want to make one short comment for all of those who are pushing that we need to stay with coal-fired power and how wonderful coal-fired power is. It's so cheap. I understand that you probably have not included in your financial analysis the 1,000 miners who die every year in the United States due to black lung from breathing in coal dust. And yes, that's current numbers. That's from the Mine Health and Safety Administration. But I guess you're not truly pro-life if you can write those miners' lives off as long as you get to pay a little bit less for your electricity. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township. Chairman Moss, just a little over a year ago, you and your posse rode into the boardroom. You made it crystal clear a new sheriff was in town. John Shea, you're fired. You made it clear no more diversity, no more equity, no more inclusion. You had a personal baggage involving Libertas School and the health department. You had an axe to grind. Adeline Hamley was a key person position. You wanted control over the health department and needed a pivot. That pivot was Nate Kelly. Your treatment of Adeline and the employees at the health department may not meet the legal definition of harassment, it certainly does not meet the requisite of a faith-based individual. You safeguarded your personal despise for the health department and masked that hate using a facade of active listening. With the Hamley termination stalling and COVID running out of steam, a new torch must be found. The Campbell plant closure. Taken from Consumers website, as part of our mission to become a cleaner, leaner, and flexible energy company, we're officially retiring our J.H. Campbell complex beginning in early 2024. This will allow us to get closer to end coal use by 2025, lower our carbon footprint, and add more renewable energy for us to deliver. No mention of communist China, China-made solar panels, no mention of liberal agenda, just a testimony to a free market business decision. Free market business decision. I am sure that your state of the county is full of self-accolades. The sages of the ages have said, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. Let us all active listen onto every word as the chairman gives his glamour shot and spin of Ottawa County. It will reveal the gloss or loss of Mr. Moss.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Oh, boy. PJ Muir, Robinson Township. You know, I sit back here and I listen almost humorously to these never-ending attacks by supposedly God-fearing people. I don't know too many God-fearing people that slander and attack and say the nasty things that some of these people do about you people. Whether it be true or not, but I sit here and I'm normally not a quiet guy, but I've been quiet these last few months. So I'm going to say something that I want people to just take into heart. If you go to Philadelphia, Independence Hall, just outside of Independence Hall, the backside, there's a little museum. And in that museum, they have a lot of personal notes from our founding fathers when the First and Second Continental Congress convened. And they talk about the physical fights that went on, the actual knockdown, drag out fights, hitting people with canes. Ben Franklin was notorious for doing that. And yet they were still able to put something together. And we call that our freedom, and we call that the United States of America. We sit here one-sided, two-sided, independent, left, right, whatever we want to call ourselves, and we can't seem to get anything together amongst each other. We can't agree to disagree like we used to even 30 years ago. Let's remember 9/11. How did 9/11 bring us all together? We forget that. I served 25 years and I put my life on the line for each and every one of you, whether I agree with them or not. They're American citizens, and I would do the same. How many of us now are willing to do that, sacrifice ourselves for one another to get this country back on track? We have to start here in this county, and this county is divided. Listen to us. For crying out loud, we're divided. There's so much hatred here. It's sickening. But we continue to do it. We continue to bash and attack people's character, attack people's jobs. If they can do better, get your behinds up here, run, and let's see if you can get in here. But until that time, let's agree to disagree, but let's unite. Let's have a revival as opposed to a revolution. Been there, done that. Don't want to fight again, but by God, I will. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
You have 2 online public comments, Mr. Chair.
All right, excellent. Let's go to online.
And the first is Adria. And Adria, if you could just state your first and last name, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Adria Hill, Holland Township. Good evening. As a concerned resident of Ottawa County, I want to share my perspective on the state of our county. First and foremost, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to the countless county employees who tirelessly work behind the scenes. You may not always make headlines, but your dedication to providing essential services is greatly appreciated. Over the past year, the Board of Commissioners has taken commendable steps to increase resident engagement. Shifting one board meeting per month to the evening has allowed for more citizens to exercise their constitutional right to voice their concerns. 3 unanimously passed initiatives from last year also stand out. First is the funding for foam trailers, which provides first responders with vital resources. Second is the coordination of early voting services that not only follows the new law, but does so in a way that is fiscally responsible. And the most recent initiative, expanding broadband access, which will unlock opportunities for residents in rural areas. Unfortunately, not all of the board's initiatives have had such a positive effect on our community. Last year, several meetings focused on lengthy resolutions that yielded little tangible progress. Furthermore, while some members of the board are proud of the questions they have asked, I have noticed this rigorous oversight is selectively applied. Looking at the financial stability of the county, it is at a crossroads. Last year brought significant severance payouts, the doubling of legal fees, and expansions in the administrator's office. These raise concerns about responsible spending. If the county does not manage their spending prudently and mitigate legal risks, our bond rating will suffer. The most pressing issue, however, is employee attraction and retention. It is an ongoing issue that the board has not yet addressed. The employee morale issue is partly related to how employees are being treated by commissioners and leaders. Former employees are citing the working conditions under Administrator Gibbs as their reason for leaving. And unfortunately, employees cannot rely on the commissioners to stand up for them. To address these challenges, the county needs to conduct that delayed employee engagement survey. If done in this first quarter, it will provide crucial data on employee concerns and guide the county towards creating a more productive work environment. This will be key to attracting and retaining talented individuals who are essential to our county's success. The good news is that the issues are within the county's control. We are not facing external threats, but internal ones that require attention. By working together and prioritizing responsible sending, fostering open communications, and valuing dedicated employees, we can build a stronger, more vibrant Ottawa County.
Thank you.
And the next public comment is Joe Spalding. Mr. Spalding, if you unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Justin. My name is Joe Spalding. I'm in Holland Township. When I was in high school, I was a junior. My debate partner was one of Pete Hoekstra's pages in Congress through the PAGE program. And so Pete came and spoke at our school. And one of my first memories politically was asking Pete Hoekstra why he voted for the Defense of Marriage Act, which defined marriage as between one man and one woman. And he looked me dead in the eyes and said, I believe that marriage is for procreation only, and that's the only relationship we should sanction. So I asked him why he thought it was okay for women who are postmenopausal to get married. And he's just like, well, I just think that it's for procreation. And I walked out, as you know, I would in high school, especially. I just want the folks that, since you have so many GOP folks there in the front row, I see Aaron Compinger. He is that confessed child molester or attempted child molester there. That's pretty disgusting. He's a Republican precinct delegate. He's sitting in front of a school board member, Donna Mooney, who says she's not a Republican, but she's surrounded by precinct delegates there. I wonder if all these folks that are in the GOP locally understand that you have Joe made them an enemy of Donald Trump, and that the Pete Hoekstra corrupt bargain was to box out Karamo and her people, including you, to keep Donald Trump out of the state for the general election, and then to deliver for Donald Trump a string of endorsements prior to the Michigan primary, which isn't common. And all of that is going to be delivered, because while you were trying to dance on the grave of all these non-existent Marxists in Ottawa County that you and Sylvia thought you defeated when you won the primary, the old school GOP was regrouping and getting ready to throw you out. And since you weren't focused on the thing that was the actual threat to you in your existence, you're now in a very, very bad position politically. Unlike our economy, which, you know, I think it's funny to see someone like Donna Mooney try to play chicken little with the economy, like minutes after, you know, our guy comes up and says that our 1 year housing increase in value is going up faster than the 2 year. So we're actually accelerating at the rate at which the housing crisis is hurting us. And finally, the last little bit of this corrupt bargain, they're going to be pushing this renewable energy package because Trump isn't going to be here. That anti-renewable energy bill, our ballot initiative, is the anchor for the GOP ballot. So fight it or not, that's your choice.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board? Welcome.
Hi, Christy Matheling from Zealand Township. I wasn't going to come up and make public comment, but I just need to commend all of you for sitting up there, taking the slings and arrows, being the voice for our county. It's amazing that last one is representing, or at least on the side of Chris Kleingens, who's running against Lucy Ebel. If that's the kind of representation that he has for the recall petition that's coming up, you might want to rethink your choices. Let freedom ring. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Hello, Board Chairman. I became aware today that a new law passed in Michigan will require background checks regardless of whether or not you're buying from a FFL. The background check that's required needs to be done by your sheriff's department or local law enforcement. And my understanding is every one of these law enforcement agencies is going to be charging for that. This is not the issue of the CPL and whether or not Ottawa County should or can charge for the CPL. This is an actual tax on purchasing a firearm. I encourage this board to look at that and decide whether or not our sheriff's department should be forcing a poll tax, is how I look at this issue. Thank you.
Sir, can I get your name? Would anyone else like to address the board? Any last brave souls?
So we had a power outage recently.
I'm
in-
sorry.
Oh, so Grand Haven
I
Township.
so appreciate that. It's for the public record and I'm clerky and I like doing those things.
Recently in Grand Haven Township for a number of days, but my house did hit 55. And so I decided to go to my in-laws. But without a reliable power source, we cannot live here. We cannot live here without reliable power. And so I just wanted to say that I just want us to not freeze to death, and we have to consider that. The other thing, my understanding of solar panels is that it just destroys agriculture. It takes up a lot of agricultural land, which we could use to eat food and farm. And instead and then also the concerns of who pays for the removal of those solar panels after they're out of commission. We have a lot of toxic chemicals in those. And so that's all I really wanted to talk about is please, I mean, that is why I got involved in politics, is because of the energy issue. I just like to be warm. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board? All right, seeing as that is all of the public comments, we'll move to 11, additional business. We do have 2 items. First up is report from County Administrator. So take it away, Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you, Chair Moss. Just a few updates here. The strategic plan, something I did present on a while back here at the Strategic Planning Committee meeting that is moving along. We have a meeting tomorrow with procurement to get the process rolling for putting out an RFP for a vendor for that who can help us through that process. So that is moving along quickly, and we're going to keep it moving fast. We will have an action item for the Finance Committee next week for that. So that is something that will be coming your way. And I would like to have another Strategic Planning Committee meeting in February. And I think we're currently working on the scheduling for that to see if we can fit that in. So very much look forward to that. As far as budgeting software, we're very excited that's up and running. We've had several calls already with OpenGov, including one this afternoon, which went very well. We're nailing down the schedule for when they're going to come here and sit with us and help us get everything installed and running. And so we've got a pretty good look at what the schedule is going to be for that. There's another call tomorrow as well. That'll be more of a technical call with some of our fiscal services people. So that is moving along pretty quickly. I'm very excited to see the progress on that. And want to thank our fiscal services staff who have been very on top of that and working with the vendors to get that up and running. Veterans Affairs is moving along really quickly. Jason is really digging in and he's really analyzing things and putting together some good information on what needs to be done in the Veterans Office. One of the issues he's dealing with, for example, is things have previously been done by paper only. So there's a lot of digitizing to do and organizing of those papers, and that is something he's going to be jumping on. The Veterans Committee did have a meeting this past Monday, well, last Monday, January 22nd. So Jason did make sure that that meeting had minutes, which it typically has not had in the past. So we're getting more exposure and proper form to the Veterans Committee meeting. So that is good to see. And the next one is going to be on February 26th. As we all know, the county is paying quite a bit of money for the Southwest Ottawa County landfill. We're apparently required to do about $400,000 to $500,000 worth of work every single year of testing and putting in monitoring wells and whatnot on that. So we're very happy to have put out an RFP to get kind of a new, fresh look on that from some outside eyes to see if there are other options for that thing other than simply draining money every year. We don't know for sure what the possibilities are, but there could be the option of pulling methane gas out of it and then selling that, which some people have done, and a few other things as well. So we really want to get a good in-depth look at what the options might be. So it's not just a money drain. So that RFP, I believe, went out today, actually, to 800 and something different potential firms who might be able to respond to it. So very excited to see what comes in there, and hopefully we get something that will save us some money. And that's all I have for now.
Right, thank you. Excited.
Question.
Commissioner Cosby, yeah.
So, checking on the budget software, do you have enough computing power? Does IT have enough computing power to support that new software project?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Commissioner Curran.
Thank you. Do you have any updates on the employee engagement survey? And where are we at? When are we going to do it? When's the last one we had?
We're still looking at what the timing might be on that. So that's a bit up in there right now. We're still looking at it.
Who normally does the employee engagement surveys? Is it done through the administration or is it typically done through HR?
I believe it's done through HR.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you, Administrator Gibbs. Really look forward to the landfill updates as well. That'll be interesting.
Thank you, Chair Moss.
There's been long running conversations on that. So thank you. Okay, we are up to 11B, State of the County. I guess what I would look for is, since this is going to be a couple hours, I'm just kidding. If we could take a short recess before we get into it, that would be great. So
Are you serious about the recess?
I am serious about the recess. If we just take a short recess, that'd be great. So if I can get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and support. Now, because we have one commissioner participating remotely, to take a short recess, we will need a roll call vote.
Absolutely. Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Current,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
No.
Mr. Bergman. Oh, sorry. Mr. Panama,
No.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
If we could make this short, that would be great. And I'll be back in. Let's try for 5 minutes, but I will start at 9, no matter what. All right. Welcome back, everyone. I will call this meeting back to order. Thank you for the short break. Appreciate that. All right. Well, next up is the state of the county. And it's an honor to share the state of the county with you tonight. Before I begin, I'd like to say thank you to the people of Ottawa County who took decisive action to defend their piece of America in 2022, to protect individual freedoms, parental rights, and freedom of religion and conscience. Also, thank you to the staff of the county who day in and day out are working for the people of our community. And thank you to the commissioners for their service as representatives. To the public, we are humbled to work for the people in our constitutional republic. 2023 was a year of prioritizing freedom and tremendous learning on the part of the board. We truly love working to protect and build Ottawa County to be a place where freedom rings and families flourish. Ottawa County continues to be among the state's most conservative counties, one of the best places to live, the fastest growing county, and in reports from November of 23, the county in Michigan with the lowest unemployment rate. I'm thankful this board is led by everyday Americans who love God and love their country, nurses, a former social worker, teacher, and individuals with business and government backgrounds. Board members bring decades of professional and life experience with them to their service. I'm also thankful for the character and integrity of my fellow commissioners who approach their responsibilities with servants' hearts and a steel resolve to advocate for the people, for good governance, and to ensure the voices of the people can be heard. We desire to govern with integrity and excellence in a manner consistent with constitutional freedoms and American values, pursuing the good and the beautiful for the people of Ottawa County. I'd like to add a special mention for Commissioner Kendra Wenzel, who joined the board last month as a representative of Georgetown Township's District 6. And with the addition of Commissioner Wenzel, Ottawa County now has a female majority board for the first time. Tonight, it is my privilege to highlight some of the work the Board of Commissioners and employees of Ottawa County have done in 2023. We're thankful for the efforts of hundreds of staff members who work hard to serve the people. Ottawa County offers a healthy and vibrant lifestyle, which fosters meaningful work, provides opportunities for business growth, honors the faith of its people, respects the family and parental rights, and protects education excellence for children. We're honored to lead beautiful Ottawa County where freedom rings. So let's start by looking back. Last year, the board entered office and delivered on months of public promises to make reforms in Ottawa County and began with bold changes to align the leadership with the priorities of the people. New leaders were placed in the roles of county administrator and corporate counsel to prioritize freedom and constitutional rights. The county motto and vision statement was changed from where you belong to where freedom rings. The previous vision statement had been used to promote the discriminatory DEI movement in the county. As stated in the resolution that changed the motto, where freedom rings, where individual freedoms, parental rights, and freedom of religion and conscience are protected, all people belong. The county logo remained the same, albeit with a minor color change, and existing supplies were used before being reordered, resulting in very minimal expense for this important change in direction. The DEI department was closed on January 3 of 2023, returning county operations to an emphasis on character, excellence, and merit. Closing the DEI department, which was originally opened in 2019, resulted in an annual savings of $286,000 per year. The closure marked a departure from the county's spread of divisive DEI and CRT ideology, which had placed an emphasis on characteristics such as gender, skin color, sexual preference, gender identity, and religious beliefs, and often taught to be reflective of whether a person is oppressed or an oppressor. The closure also ended the county's efforts to spread membership in GARE, a progressive organization connected with UC Berkeley and the Biden administration. The board standing committees also saw changes in 2023. Last year, commissioners were asked to serve on any of the standing committees that they desired. The goal was to provide the opportunity for new commissioners to understand all the various aspects of county government and the county departments. Due to this work, and thank you to board members who put in extra effort, the board is in a much better position this year to create a strong strategic plan for 2024 and beyond. Many commissioners exercised thoughtfulness and discernment during board meetings, asking numerous questions to provide oversight and gain understanding. This is the job of the board. The board paid careful attention to the requirements and ramifications of grants being requested, as well as the organizations that grants were connected to. One example I thought would be worth mentioning is also mentioned in an online post done by Commissioner Miedema. In the post, Commissioner Miedema explained her concerns with an $8,000 grant that was brought to the board for a 2-month social media campaign called Man Therapy that was related to suicide prevention. Commissioners were informed that veterans were at the highest risk of suicide, followed by males and those over 50 years old. Commissioner Miedema had explained on the Man Therapy site, under a section labeled LGBTQ Crisis and Support Resources, links directed youth to something called the Trevor Project, where youth are encouraged to text, call, or chat through online messaging with adults they do not know regarding mental health, sexuality, gender fluidity, and other topics. The Trevor Project further notes, while all our counselors are trained, they're not working as licensed mental health workers and may not be trained in your state's law. This is a mixed message being sent to youth today, wrote Miedema. On one hand, we're educating our children about internet safety, safe adults, and talking with a parent or another trusted adult about hard topics and issues. Then we are driving them to a website where they're encouraged to speak with a complete stranger. And the stranger tells them that their conversation will be kept confidential. I would suggest the phrase kept secret. In the past, grants like this could have been rubber stamped by the board and passed right through. As Thomas Sowell expressed, there are no perfect solutions. There are only trade-offs. Assessing trade-offs has been a priority of the board in 2023 and will remain in the future. In cases where the benefits of a proposal do not outweigh risks, often a different solution can be found. In the case of suicide prevention, the board alternatively made a significant investment in increasing support for veterans by expanding the Veterans Department, with greater potential for long-term impact in the community and greater support for those at highest risk of suicide. Moving along, commissioners also served on numerous other committees throughout the county, such as community mental health, parks and recreation, groundwater, economic development, just to name a few. The talent and recruitment process was also a priority last year and making improvements to it. The committee invested significant effort into organizing the information and improving the interview processes related to the numerous county committees that community members have the opportunity to participate in. The subcommittee of talent and recruitment conducted numerous interviews of citizens from the public over many days throughout the year to make recommendations for those citizens to serve on these committees. The county budget was also a high priority last year. The board focused on unmet needs, like increasing support for veterans by creating the enhanced department, prioritizing ADA compliance across the county in the capital improvement plan, and funding needs in the sheriff's department. In this way, the board is initiating action on items overlooked in the past This new focus is critical for good governance and to have positive impacts for our community and the best use of taxpayer dollars. The capital improvement plan is a big part of planning for the future. A 5-year plan was approved on August 22, 2023, to include approval of ADA compliance needs, first identified in July, and the approval of body cameras for the Sheriff's Department. A lot of work went into creating this plan, and we're thankful to the staff for all of that effort. The board first became aware of ADA compliance needs when the Department of Public Health requested approval for a $10,000 grant to pay for an $8,000 ADA compliant door and lighting to make one of the buildings in the Department of Public Health more accessible and sensory friendly. The purpose of the $10,000 grant was to increase vaccine uptake and then share the data that was collected with Wayne State University. However, the board did not approve this $10,000 grant due to the strings attached, and instead went on to broadly approve funding to prioritize ADA compliance in more county buildings through the capital improvement plan. The plan included fiscal year 2024 funding of nearly $500,000 to address ADA updates, including powered doors, parenting rooms, lighting, and signage for the Department of Public Health building on James Street, as well as additional funding for CMH and the HHS buildings to address ADA updates. This allowed the board to prioritize ADA compliance on a much larger scale without pushing vaccines or sharing data on our people with outside organizations. Another item of note included in the capital improvement plan is the planned capital cost of over $1 million for vehicle and body cameras for the Sheriff's Department, which is anticipated to be rolled out this year. This project had been discussed for a long time and prior funding had been committed, but had stalled for lack of support at the board level. Thank you, board, for being supportive and willing to make body cameras a priority for the Sheriff's Department. Next, I'd like to highlight how the board focused on increasing budget transparency throughout the budget process. The county's budget for fiscal year 2024 was approved on September 26, 2023. The $264 million budget appropriated nearly $110 million in general fund expenditures. The first budget draft was provided to Finance and Administration Committee on August 1 and was built on the budget request from county departments. The Finance Committee added 2 new public work sessions in August to provide increased transparency in the budget for that budget year and that budget work, and added a total of 5 public meetings where the budget was reviewed and addressed. During the committee's work, adjustments were made based on details requested and provided by the administrator, fiscal services, elected officials, appointed officials, and department heads. The board is very thankful for all of the work that went into the budget process by the staff. It became apparent that leaders of the Department of Public Health were not accustomed to board oversight and engagement in the budget process, seemingly expecting blanket approval for department wishes. However, budget oversight is the statutory responsibility of the Board of Commissioners and must be taken seriously by the board. The Department of Public Health's repeated and reactionary engagement with activist media during the process, rather than professional engagement with the board and county leadership, led to unnecessary panic in the community. At $14.39 million, the budget yielded the budget process yielded the second highest budget for the Department of Public Health, second only to the prior year. And that prior year budget had additional COVID spending that had caused it to increase. Thank you, board, for choosing to discontinue those COVID grants. Next up, strengthening the Veterans Department. Numerous community members expressed a long-standing need for increased outreach and expanded services for veterans and their families. Veterans continue to suffer the highest suicide rate like I had mentioned earlier, and surrounding counties have invested greater resources than Ottawa County had, sometimes by passing millages to support veteran services at higher levels. Working within the current financial resources of the county, funds were allocated to hire a director, thoroughly assess current needs, and begin to build the Veterans Department to robustly serve those who have sacrificed so much for our country. The new philosophy of the department is, I'm happy to report, deeds, not words. The department is being built on a foundation of 4 pillars: employment, education, health, and quality of life. We're excited to continue supporting this department and watch the progress the staff makes this year. Another major initiative underway is broadband. Last December, after much work with the staff, the board approved a broadband infrastructure initiative to provide internet services to rural portions of Ottawa County. The $7.5 million in ARPA funds that had been allocated by the prior board will be utilized by the county in combination with state and other funding for a project total of $25 million. The open access expansion increases competition countywide and connects rural areas. It prioritizes our farms and rural communities, and the project will allow the construction of nearly 400 miles of new fiber. An additional partnership with Tealson Technologies allows Tealson to start assessing opportunities for enhanced fixed wireless and ultimately to construct new towers in critical locations, especially in rural areas, that will be supported by the new fiber infrastructure. Both partnership agreements, both for the broadband and Tealson towers, I'm thankful to report, will include provisions for revenue sharing that will direct revenue back to the county. This is something that is fairly unique and innovative, and I'm thankful for all the work that went into negotiating these contracts and agreements. It is helpful so the taxpayers can see money come back to the county. The expansion of reliable, high-speed internet, even in rural parts of Ottawa County, is an important step in ensuring additional access to economic resources and technological advancements and innovation, especially in the farming community. Next, I'd like to review department highlights. I'll go over some briefly. In administration, in 2023, the board approved enhancements to county communications to increase the ability of the county departments and board to effectively communicate with the people. Implementation will continue in 2024. In corporate counsel, new procedures and requirements were put in place to strengthen contract language used by the county with outside organizations. Some of this work was standardization as well. Corporate counsel also assisted with review of county policies and the plan of organization for the Department of Public Health, among many other things. The board worked, for county clerk, the board worked with the county clerk to strengthen election integrity measures while also supporting a joint effort with townships to meet new statutory election requirements for early voting. Local units of government worked with Clerk Roebuck for many months to prepare a plan to meet the requirements of the new state law. The board approved an agreement for early voting administrative services with the provision of additional staff, which we heard earlier tonight were now in place, and resources to facilitate identified needs, including watermark ballots. Thank you, Clerk Roebuck. In the Sheriff's Department, negotiation with multiple law enforcement employee unions placed the county in a stronger position to both attract and retain quality law enforcement personnel. This is important because Ottawa County is known for its safety and security and excellent law enforcement. This is one of the main priorities of the board. Body cameras were mentioned. Funding was approved for body cameras, as well as the support staff that's required to be able to handle all of the video footage in the sheriff and prosecutor's offices. Also, an exciting update, office space was provided for the Children's Anti-Exploitation Partnership, otherwise known as CAP. On April 11, 2023, the board approved the use of office space here at the Fillmore Complex for the Children's Anti-Exploitation Partnership, division of Crisis Aid International. at the request of the Sheriff's Department. CAP serves children and young people up to age 25 as well as their families. CAP is an innovative new approach that focuses on reaching children at risk for sex trafficking and other forms of child sexual abuse. CAP provides advocacy, resources, and support to children and families identified in internet-related crimes against children and in human trafficking investigations. As mentioned earlier, the fire foam trailers in 2022, Ottawa County's hazmat team requested ARPA funds for the purchase of fire foam trailers to protect residents from chemical fires. Unfortunately, that request was not granted. On April 11 of last year, the Board of Commissioners approved the expenditure of $125,000 from the Hazardous Material Rescue Team operation budget to be combined with another $125,000 from local fire department jurisdictions, who all worked hard to make sure that this need was funded. A big thanks goes out to all the people involved in the process, especially in the Sheriff's Department and from the local units. In community mental health, Carter kits were made available to local law enforcement, fire departments, and rescue agencies to assist children with sensory needs in traumatic emergency situations. CMH also started a review of social recreational programs. CMH board is reviewing the social rec programs funded by the county millage. And the review was a proactive response to taxpayer questions about how tax dollars are being spent to support the vulnerable in the community. The CMH millage is also up for renewal in 2026. So we're thankful for the proactive work of the CMH board. In the Department of Public Health, the board took steps to begin to align the department with the priorities of the people, bringing transparency and accountability to the department. During the year, as mentioned, the board took care with the evaluation and approval of grants, weighing the benefits and risks before making decisions. In the finance department, the board continues to move towards a cost of service approach, which you heard mentioned tonight a little bit, in budgeting and resource allocation for the county. This effort will help the board, staff, and the community better understand how taxpayer dollars are being spent. The board is working to improve awareness of programs that are valued in our community by our community members through new budget software. And this new software that was researched last year was just approved this month, as we've heard quite a bit about. This as well is very important for the additional transparency, for fiscal transparency and long-term decision-making. In Parks and Recreation, the Parks Department continues to provide amazing opportunities for education and recreation for both our residents and visiting tourists. Work and expansion of the county's numerous parks continued with the Rosie Mound expansion, Kirk Park, Sequia Trails, and Ottawa Sands. In the Ottawa County 20th Circuit Court, we have updates on the Family Justice Center. Construction continues here at the Fillmore Complex, and this will provide much needed space and resources for our courts. Adoption Day, which I'm excited to mention, the board celebrated Michigan Adoption Day by passing a resolution and participating in the proceedings at the Ottawa County Family Court. Commissioner Sylvia Rhodey read the resolution and shared her thoughts on behalf of the board, as the day held special meaning for her since she worked in foster care and adoption and had adopted a son. The resolution stated in part, "Today we celebrate families and children who embrace the beauty and the hard that is adoption. There's pain and loss that brings us to adoption, but there's also so much love and joy. We also celebrate siblings who are part of adoption stories and lifelong relationships. Families throughout Ottawa County have invested in providing foster and adoptive homes for children in need, which is beautiful to see. And it was wonderful that so many board members could head across the parking lots to participate in the ceremony, which I hope we see continue in the future. In the Human Resources Department, administration and HR made adjustments to policies and job classifications to better retain experienced staff members. The county also adjusts certain benefits to remain competitive in the market. In the Department of Strategic Planning, there is a lot happening. but I'd like to mention one item in particular. The department proposed a cost-saving initiative, which was approved to demonstrate the use of natural landscaping. This in turn will reduce expenses at the Fillmore complex, and we're excited to see how it looks this spring. Moving on, we should recognize two items that fit into the category of the good and the beautiful. The Ottawa County Art Trust exhibition was on June 26, 2023. And last summer, the walls of the Fillmore complex were covered with beautiful works from talented local artists. Ottawa County and the Holland Area Arts Council chose 8 of the 53 pieces for purchase awards. And to all who participated, thank you for making our days brighter while at work. There were also significant emphasis put on agriculture. Commissioners have invested a lot of time and energy in supporting the diverse and abundant agriculture in Ottawa County, recognizing its economic importance for our county and our state, and the contribution of our farms to our culture and our way of life. Commissioners went on numerous events and learning experiences to help with future decision-making. Next, I'd like to just mention a couple resolutions. The board spoken in numerous issues facing the county via its resolutions, but here are 2 examples. One is the constitutional county resolution that was passed on May 23, and I'll just read one excerpt. Therefore, be it resolved that the board declares Ottawa County, Michigan, to be a constitutional county, and resolves to protect the individual freedoms of the people of Ottawa County, as outlined in the constitutions of the United States and the state of Michigan, to include freedom of speech, religion, and assembly, the right to keep and bear arms, and the right to due process. The resolution to protect childhood innocence passed on June 27. An excerpt includes, be it further resolved, no county staff or resources shall be allocated to activities, programs, events, content, or institutions which support, normalize, or encourage the sexualization of children and youth. The board encourages individuals and communities to promote the good and the honorable to children rather than the normalization of sexual behaviors, protecting the health and well-being of our children and the future of our county. Much has happened in the last year. I'm excited to see what the board does in this year as well. As we enter 2024, the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners will lead courageously, reject passivity, and restore and protect local authority, and respect the values and the faith of the people of Ottawa County. As a constitutional county, we'll protect the individual freedoms of the people of Ottawa County to include freedom of speech, religion, assembly, the right to keep and bear arms, and the right to due process. We will promote a love of America and her people. We will live out the county mission statement of where freedom rings. Where individual freedoms, parental rights, and religious and conscience freedoms are protected, all people belong. We will support a strong public safety, law enforcement, and justice system, as well as continue the work of compassionate rehabilitation through the court system to decrease recidivism and increase the productivity and flourishing of individuals and families. We will encourage individuals and communities to promote the good and the honorable to children rather than the normalization of sexual behaviors, protecting the health and well-being of our children and the future of our county. We will protect and prioritize the needs of families, children, and unborn children. We'll protect each parent's right to guide their child's care and education. We'll be watchful of how the county interacts with the OAISD and local school districts. We'll promote accountability and transparency to ensure the county's actions with schools are both limited and appropriate. We'll protect the individual and parental rights to make personal health choices, and we'll require government to provide information rather than operate through orders or coercion. We'll honor our heroes of freedom, our veterans, with not only words, but actions, strengthening the Veterans Department's ability to serve veterans and their families. We'll prioritize excellence and merit over identity characteristics in county interactions and in county hiring, treating all individuals with kindness and respect. We'll prioritize fiscal responsibility and transparency in the use of government funds, otherwise known as taxpayer dollars, through public reporting of county expenses, yes, even down to McDonald's receipts, as well as the implementation of improved budgeting software and continued robust budget process. We'll explore and seek to implement innovative solutions for the challenges and opportunities of energy, groundwater, housing, and home ownership. We'll work to protect farmland and the diverse agricultural industry of Ottawa County. We'll support election integrity efforts of the county and township clerks to include the implementation of watermarked ballots. We'll continue to support the development of Ottawa County's parks, encouraging communities to enjoy the good and beautiful things of nature's surroundings. We'll support business growth and independence in Ottawa County, recognizing our county is built on the hard work and entrepreneurship of generations of individuals and families. Every job is essential. We'll support the meaningful work of the Community Mental Health and Department of Public Health, ensuring the needs of the vulnerable are met while respecting parental rights and individual freedoms. In closing, the board will continue to make Ottawa County where freedom rings and focus on preserving the heritage of Ottawa County. We live in an amazing place with wonderful people, great jobs, low unemployment, significant growth, strong churches, thriving communities, and a people who love freedom. I'd like to, again, thank the board, the staff, and the people of Ottawa County. And especially, I'm grateful to Almighty God for the blessings of freedom and the duty to secure these blessings for our children and our grandchildren. With that, we have reached the end of our meeting. Well, thank you. And this meeting is adjourned.